Hey, Brian, my old friend, longtime friend. How are you?
I'm good, Tony. You knew me when I had hair.
I don't think you had. Did you have hair when
I had,
we?
a, I, had a, I had a little bit. Maybe I was the only one who knew it was there.
I definitely had hair when we met, um, and we have shared some good times together. So it's really excellent to see you, and I appreciate your good words when you spoke at the Church Anew conference a few months back last year with Rosella, and really great, brought some great stuff that people found super helpful. How are you spending your quarantine time?
Well, I am happy to be home, happy to not be traveling. Uh, I live in Southwest Florida, so if you have to be quarantined, it's a pretty nice place to be. I get out and take a walk every day and enjoy uh, the beautiful early summer, late spring that we're actually in now. But I'm involved with several different organizations that are highly activated right now during the pandemic, and so I've been on a lot of Zoom calls and trying to help a lot of people figure out how do we seize this moment and make the most of it. And then I've been working on finishing up my next book and then starting the book after that.
Well, let's hear a couple of quick elevator pitches about those two books.
So the next book is called Faith After Doubt, and it's probably my most self-explanatory title. But I talk about doubt as actually an essential part of the growth of faith, and I offer a four-stage model to help people understand how doubt kind of works. And then Do I Stay Christian? The book that will be after that is not trying to tell people whether to stay Christian or not, but offering my best thinking on reasons to not stay Christian, reasons to stay Christian, and how to live whatever decision you decide.
Okay, so I was going to ask, what's the answer? I mean,
Yeah. So the
you got
book
to
is
read the book.
divided. The book's divided into three parts. The first part is called No. The second part is called Yes, and the third part is called How.
Oh,
Either
good,
way, how.
good. Well, Brian, the reason I wanted to talk to you today is, for many years I've had pastors of churches say, I wish I could just shut down my church for 6 months and hit a reset button and start over. We'd start with a new name. We'd figure out how to staff our church differently. We'd get rid of all the old programs that have been hanging around forever for no reason. And yet nobody ever does that, of course, because there's enormous risk that you turn the lights back on 6 months later and nobody comes. They've all found other churches or realized that they didn't really miss church that much. And so now everyone's doing that involuntarily. I mean, we've got Zoom services and Facebook Live worshiping,
Yes.
but the buildings are closed and most of the programs have stopped. And what I wanted to talk to you is, you are one of I think I've only met two people ever who did it, and you're one of them.
Yeah.
You actually started a church, didn't really like how it was going, and shut it down and restarted it months later. So I'm just wondering if you can reflect with us on that, what that was like,
Yeah.
what you learned, why you did it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I promise I want to do that, but can I just tell you a quick anecdote first that's
Please.
a little unrelated to that. A couple of years ago, I led a retreat for pastors, co-led it with Jackie Lewis down in Louisiana. It was a very small group. And one of the days, each half day, we had a different subject. So one half day, our subject was money. And the first half of the morning, we were talking about church money. And then the second half of the morning, we were talking about sort of personal finance, that sort of thing. But in the church money part, I had this exercise. And in the exercise, I said, imagine your offering increased by 30%. What would you do if you knew that from today forward, you had 30% more income? And so people journaled and wrote for a few minutes, and then we talked and shared. Second question, imagine that this Sunday you had a 30% drop in income, and you knew that that was going to be stable at 30% less for the next leg of the journey. Same, let people write and think and then share. The energy level in the second exercise was 10 times higher than the first exercise. People were so energized by a 30% drop in income. And you think that makes no sense. I was surprised. I didn't expect that. But here's what almost everybody said. If we had a 30% drop in income, we couldn't keep doing what we're doing. We'd have to just scrap it and start from scratch. We'd have to sell our facility. We'd have to restructure our stuff. We'd have to rethink everything we're doing. And what people really want is to stop having to make these small tweaks and start being able to think of a much deeper restructuring. And that seems to me to be an opportunity that people might have. They could make this pandemic that opportunity, because the fact is, there is a kind of, in systems theory, we say that systems always seek equilibrium. And so a system keeps going, and it doesn't ever get too much better than this or too much worse than this. It just stays within that range. And even if a trauma hits, give it a little time and it goes back to that range. Same thing people experience when they win the lottery. They might be a little happier for a while, but even with $1 million in the bank, they go to being about as happy as they were and about as sad as they were. We just have equilibrium or a certain stasis that we are a balance that we go back to, and very often that level of sustenance is very unsatisfying. It's not enough to pull the plug, but it's certainly not enough to say there's quality of life, right? And what I think this coronavirus could do for congregations that are willing, and I actually know of at least one that's doing this because I've been in conversation with them about it, is they're saying, you know what, we can't get back. Like this loss of income for the next several months, it's going to end. And so what they're now doing is saying, well, what do we want to do? They have some money in the bank, and now they have the chance to say, this is our opportunity to rethink everything. That's what we did. We've been a new church plant, and we've been going for about, now I forgot, maybe 6 or 7 years. And we were sustainable and we were doing okay, but none of us were really, our leaders weren't really satisfied. And we said, we've gotten into some ruts. We brought too much of our old baggage with us. And we don't think we'll be able to, don't think we'll be able to ask people to change these things with us. There'll be too much opposition. So what we said is, we'd like to shut the church down and invite as many of you as are willing to be part of a church planting team to start over again. We did this 6 or 7 years ago. We want to get a fresh start now. And that allowed us to rethink a whole lot of things and get a fresh start.
Tell me, when you did that, what'd you do for those months you were off? There was no Zoom at the time.
That's right. So we were in rented facilities, and so we didn't have a big, building that we had to keep paying for. But I forget when we met, but we met at a different time. But we actually said, okay, let's have some meetings to start planning the new church that we would like to start and the changes we'd like to make. And so we just turned that group of people from a church into a church planting team, in a sense, for a period of months. I can't remember. I think it was 8 months that we gave ourselves to rethink. If I could do it over again, it would have been a little bit longer, because you need enough time to be sure the old rhythms are really broken and the old assumptions are really broken. But we came up with a new name, a new mission statement, a new vision. Really, it gave us a chance to say, what do we need to do differently?
So you really did start over.
Yeah. And obviously, we started over with most of the same people. But what happened is, within a year of when we started over, that little core group, I forget how many people, let's say 40 or 50 people who stayed with us through the transition, well, now there were 150 or 200 people. And so in a sense, we brought in a new day with a new wave of people, because we stopped doing things in the way that those 40 people liked. And we invited those 40 people to say, what do we need to do to connect with our friends who don't want to be part of what we are currently doing?
And you wrote your first book out of that experience.
Yeah.
And,
so,
the plant and replant. Yeah.
It was about 10 years later. And, I don't know how much we want to go into this now, but what was happening to me this sounds like ancient history now, but in 1989, when we'd started in 82, in 89, we had that kind of restart. I was starting to understand that there was a cultural shift going on. And in the coming years, I called that a shift from modern to postmodern culture. And of course, you and I have both been involved in that conversation. And so in many ways, what we had the chance to do was shift, what was to do a purge of some of our modern assumptions and open ourselves up to some different assumptions.